All right, let's do a little recap. Anyone have any good news coming in from the weekend?
Yeah, I'm drowning right now.
Tell me everything. Tell everyone everything.
Yeah, I told a couple of the gals here. So when my husband and I announced that we were with Keller Williams, we had a couple of folks, who knew we were agents, but now I have 2 buyers,
You have 2 buyers already.
just from announcing that. And then my parents and my sister were already my clients, but my sister found a house, so she's gonna make an offer, and then I'm gonna buy her house as an investment property. I feel like there's something else. What am I missing? But anyways, regardless, 6 transactions, just like that.
How about that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so a couple of things
Yes.
that I want to chat with you about on that. Number one is this this program in general terms, and all of our businesses will succeed when we create a bunch of stories,
Yeah.
and then we share the stories.
Yeah.
So everyone you know inside and outside of this market center should be aware of how your life has changed over the last couple weeks, right? From coming to KW, from getting involved in this program, to getting out there and telling the world what you need to tell them, so that business comes back into your world, right? If I can share, and this it's going to sound a little selfish, but if I can say, hey, the agents that are engaged in productivity coaching, this is what happens to their business when they get involved, and the agents who choose not to get involved in productivity coaching, this is what happens to their business. I really hope these people have awesome businesses also. But if I can show and prove and create stories around the fact that these people are faster and larger, then I'm going to tell the world that. And I would encourage you guys to do the same thing. That's awesome. Anyone else have any
I have a little
successes? Sure.
It's not, I can't really call it a success, but to me it is, okay, so on the personal level. I've been doing a lot of open houses, and 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, well, more like 3, I did an open house. I met this really fun couple. I really felt like we connected. They were looking at a townhouse, they were leasing, they told me they were leasing until September, and so it seemed like they really liked the one I showed them. I got their phone number, and I texted them immediately, like that same day after they left, and then I haven't heard a thing. Like, I emailed them.
You've been trying, right?
And I've been trying, and so the last thing I did was something that Aubrey suggested. Remember when he said, just text them saying, are you still looking for, in their case, a townhouse? And he said, don't even say your name, don't even say hi, this is Natasha, blah, blah, blah. So I did exactly that. And sure enough, the husband responds to me, Don, and says, yeah, kinda. And so I keep, talking to him, and then he said, hey, let's do a group test. Here's Shannon's number, because she never provided hers, his wife. And so I'm like, great, so
That's
then
really good.
I group texted him. They were responding. They were willing to do, like I said, I can set you up with an FMLS, a portal, so they signed up for that. They signed up for my app,
Beautiful.
because I shared it with them. So now I'm just so happy, because at least, like, I have something back from them. Like, I heard something, because I was stressing over it. I'm like, why aren't you talking to me? And so at least now I have a little bit of, like, I know they're not gonna buy tomorrow, but at least, like, it's just a good feeling.
So I was going to say, did it make you feel good?
Yes.
Okay, then go
Yes.
do that 100 times,
Yes.
because you will get business from that. I heard a script at Family Reunion that said, like Aubrey suggested, are you still looking for a townhome? Just leave it that simple. I've heard one that's like, is this thing working? Just type, is this thing working? Right? The idea, you're supposed to have fun with these people, right? We're supposed to, whatever it takes, I want to know as quickly as possible, is there a chance that we're going to have a relationship here? Or are you planning on never speaking to me again? Because if I can tell that you're never going to speak to me again, I need you out of my face as fast as possible, because I'm devoting too much energy to you right now. Right? So good job. So Heather hosted an open house for me this weekend. I'll share a couple of her successes. She is now in touch with the next door neighbor who wants to list their home. She is also in touch with a couple who wants to use her to look at one more home before they make a decision. They're unrepresented. And there was one other one, I'm drawing a blank on the story right now, but that's potentially about $1.5 million worth of business
Wow.
for the cost of some balloons and a few hours of her time,
Nice.
right?
That's good.
That is awesome.
So remember how we talked about, I don't know if you guys were in the team meeting or in one of the sessions, we talked about luck.
Mhm.
Recall that?
Mhm.
So we'll just talk about the first two sides of luck really fast. The first side is blind luck. Blind luck would be somebody walking into the building and saying, hey, Natasha works here, right? Where is she? I'd like to give her a piece of business, right? That would be completely luck, right? Activity, which doesn't happen all that often, by the way. It's never happened to me. I've been here 10 years, right? Has it ever happened to you?
Once.
Once in 40 years, right?
Well, no, once in 10 years since here.
Once in 10 years.
So,
I don't like those chances very much because Marie's here 300 days out of the year, right? So over the course of 3,000 days, that's happened to you once. I'm gonna pick different.
Right,
I'm gonna
right.
do something different, right? Activity-based luck is when you go and create a bunch of chaos, right? When you get some things, you take the dust off a bunch of stuff, you go, look under things and you make noise and you make chaos, and then something falls into your lap, right? So that's like, I'm gonna go host an open house, I'm gonna tell a bunch of people about it, and the next door neighbor, who literally is in town, I used to live next to the guy, so I know, he's in town like maybe 3-4 days a month. Well, he happened to be available that day, and he happened to get inspired to go and visit with Heather, and next thing you know, they have a listing appointment set up. Make sense? So get out there and ruffle some feathers, and let's create some chaos, and let's book some appointments. What happened to you this weekend?
I listed a condo, we're gonna have to get it emptied out. It belonged to a hoarder.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
Food hoarder.
A food order, like for like the end of days or something?
Probably.
Probably, I mean, just every surface is covered with beans and rice and.
Like,
cabbage
is
and
it like
salad
canned,
dressing.
is it canned stuff?
Lots of canned, lots of rice, lots of,
In a condo, in a little place? Interesting.
Wow.
It's a 2-1 upstairs.
yeah, everything is.
She's got like a bedroom full of canned goods?
The whole living room, the kitchen, the dining room.
Everywhere.
Where's she gonna go?
He died, so I guess he went to heaven.
So where's she wanna move to?
It belongs to his daughter is inheriting, remember I?
Gotcha.
So, and I mean, the good story is that she contacted me and said, I don't know where to start, cause he didn't leave a will. And I asked Kern put me in touch with Phil Erickson, who is O'Kelly and Zorhan's wills and estates guy, and
Funniest attorney in town.
and told me, step by step exactly what we need to do.
Yep. Do you think that's adding value to this relationship? Is she gonna get, like, paid for, like, that segment of the work? No. Is she gonna get way more than the commission from being involved in that segment of the work? What I mean by that is there's a whole lot of stuff that's gotta get done, from prepping the house, dealing with the attorneys, dealing with the courts and all this kind of stuff. And then finally, this woman's gonna say, let's put the sign in the yard. And that's when normally our relationship would start, and that's what we're paid for. But Maria has been involved with a bunch of other vendors, and will be involved for the probably foreseeable future, getting all that prepped. Now, that's when the relationship is cemented. If Marie can be involved in making sure that this woman gets solid advice, doesn't waste time, doesn't waste money, everything is nice and efficient, she learns a lot during the process, not to mention what Marie learns, right? Do you think that woman is ever gonna choose a different realtor? I don't either.
The same goes for Kern. I mean,
Yeah.
will Kern maybe get this one little $200,000 condo transaction closed? But the fact that Phil Erickson was willing to stop what he was doing and talk to me on Friday and give me his cell phone number and say, here, because you're a Keller Williams agent, she's your client, you're our alliance partner. anything I can do to help, other than doing it all for her, is, you know, all the questions she wants to ask me are free.
That's right, because she's, going back to the client for a second, she's very confused, she's lost, she just lost
She's
a
lost.
father, right?
She's lost.
And what she needs is somebody to relieve her of a portion of the stress that she has on her plate right now, right? And as real estate agents, and many of us are new in the room, is sometimes we are amateur financial planners, marriage counselors, life coaches, accountants.
Wish we could prescribe.
Yeah, exactly. We could probably transition a real estate business pretty easily into a
Psychiatric hospital?
Yeah.
Yes.
Therapist. This-
therapist for sure.
This lady and
Oh
her
my
husband
God.
are also pet sitters,
Mm-hmm.
and so they come in contact with a lot of people
Yeah.
who are coming and going.
Right, so you just, this could be a core advocate for you if you teach them how to refer you, you know, very, very clearly. Not just, here's Maria, I have a few extra of her business cards, that, again, that's not helpful.
Right.
Grabbing them by the shirt and saying, don't you make a real estate decision without talking to Marie, she's the best realtor in town. Are you clear?
Right.
Okay. Donna, any positive news from the weekend? Anything you
Well,
wanna share?
First time I went and previewed homes, so that was an experience.
Tell us about it.
I forgot my code.
Okay.
I forgot that I needed one,
Yeah,
and so I had to go through a series of numbers before I got the right one. So I was glad for my super key.
yeah.
So I was glad that I was doing it by myself and not with a client or somebody standing next to me.
Of course,
Yes.
so congratulations for
Figured that out.
for preparing. The first time I ever tried to open a lockbox, I did not remember, I didn't know, no one ever told me that I needed to that you used to have to update them you used to have to like plug them in and stuff. You don't have to do that anymore, but remember those days?
I remember.
You had to put them on the little thingy?
I remember
Charger.
that,
Yeah.
some of the people in this room might surprise you, who locked themselves out of a house
Upstairs.
More than once.
more than once.
I only called you once, I
I-
think. Marie rescued me.
You had to come rescue me.
Be very, very cognizant when you go into a three-story townhouse and you go out that upstairs level, that the door is not locked behind you.
Right, and,
Because you can't get down to
or
the
that
third story.
those decks don't have stairs going down.
Don't do that in July
Marie,
either.
Marie and I have been friends for
Oh
many
my
years.
gosh, that is too funny.
Thank you again for that. I might still be there if it wasn't for you, because that was I believe that was a vacant foreclosure probably. All right, tell us more.
And so because I have heard some of these stories before, Melvis told one too, I was very cognizant of where my key was at all times and of the doors not locking behind me. So that was helpful.
Yes.
What else? I wanted to do some video so that I could post it, and,
Yeah.
I sent you a question about that. My video was a little dark, so now I know I need to work on my video. So I learned some things.
Beautiful.
It was a good experience. I did about 6 of them, so.
Beautiful. So what I would do is, as a way to test your pricing skill, right, or as it's starting to develop, is, you know, study that price in that home. So for example, you go into house number 1 and you say, okay, this has been on the market for 6 weeks. It started at 400,000. Then it went to 390. Now it's at 385 or something like that, right? And so you're walking through the door and you're saying, no one in the world is interested in paying $400,000 for this home, right? And it turns out no one in the world is interested in paying $390 either, right? And so constantly you are updating your kind of market knowledge so that you can understand when you go into a house like that to represent a seller potentially, or when you're in the house with a buyer, you know what the market is. You're like, there's 8 billion people in the world, not a single one of them is willing to pay 400 for this house right now, right? So the more and more you can do that, maybe you just jot on here, hey, according to my research, I think this home should sell for 365. Stash it away. And then in a month or so, go grab it, see if that home's still active. Turns out, sold for $365, I'm doing good. Oop, sold for $340, whoa, what did I miss? See what I'm saying? So use this as your key as a way to go look at the inventory, study how the market is reacting to it. Does everyone follow what I'm saying? Okay. Who spent some time on command?
I did another campaign.
Tell us more about that.
So I ran, I don't know if you guys know, but some of you were here when Sam did a class on
Mhm.
running ads through command on Facebook. So I did it right then in the class. I got 10 leads from it.
You got 10 leads.
I can't say that those leads are great, just because one of them was completely lame email address. The other 9.
Lowthanks@yahoo.com? That's what I got.
No, it looked good. It's Charles something and the last name at gmail.com, but it came back to me saying that it's undeliverable, so it's a lame, yeah. The other 9 are not responsive, you know, like I've texted, I've emailed.
So is this thing working?
Right, that's gonna be my next step, but at least I got some, you know, clicks. So I
So you
decided,
got 9 leads, sorry to cut you off. How
Yes.
much money did you spend on that?
$30.
Do you guys know what an
So-
average lead, according to NAR, costs right now online? About $55. She just got 10 leads for $3 a piece.
Yeah. So I decided to run another one. So this time what I did is I picked my own, I went on FMLS, I picked my own listing, you know, that I liked. You know, it's a really
What
beautiful.
did you do the first time?
There was an agent in the room, and it was like a $1.2 million house with the pool and everything. And so we just used that because it was a pretty house.
Yeah.
But this time I just picked something that I felt would appeal to a lot of people. It was very modern, kind of, you know, like really, really cool with a lot of interesting pictures. The pictures were amazing, you know, whoever did the pictures, you know, for that listing. So I took that, I emailed the agent saying, hey, her name is Tanya. I said, by the way, just so you know, I'm using the listing for a campaign, you know, hopefully it will bring me buyers and you can sell it quicker, you know, just kind of.
Just as a side note, also ask her, who's your photographer? Right, start
Right, I probably
start to
should.
build up your circle, right?
Yeah.
Your people that you go to when, I mean, you do want great pictures like that, right?
Right.
So call her, figure out who the photographer is, say,
So-
hey, I'm Natasha, we're gonna work together a lot, cause I'm gonna be building a listings-based business. I just wanna learn more about your business. You know, how long do you need in order to set, you know, if I call you and say, hey, I'm ready, does that mean I get you in a week, 2 weeks, an
Right.
hour? Right? Because most people are not, I wouldn't call that aggressive, I would just call that smart and active, right?
Proactive, right.
Right, so everything you see that's impressive, learn something about it and record it. So now you have a new photographer, sorry, keep going.
Right, well, I need to do that, you're right. So yeah, so it just started to run yesterday. I haven't gotten anything from it, but I am very much, I wanna learn more and more about command because I think the resources it offers are amazing. It's just a matter of learning of how to use it to your benefit and
Yep.
really knowing how to use it like seamlessly,
Yeah,
you know, to get what you need from it. So I guess it's actually one of my big goals in the very near future. I'm taking every single class of Sam's in March.
Love it.
Like, I need to know what else it can do for me.
love it. I just realized that there's one thing on the calendar for Wednesday that conflicts with Sam's class. So I'm just gonna go back and look to see when, a different time we can do it. And just while I'm thinking about it, I'm out tomorrow. So, you're more than welcome to use the room, but I won't be here in the morning. Okay?
Would
Where are you doing the other meetings today, since she has Ignite in here?
What am I doing the other meetings?
Yeah, don't you have a couple of other things?
I think there was one at
scheduled for
1 or
today?
noon.
No, I thought it was like,
I think Amelba's starting later today, isn't she?
I don't know about that. What time is the first thing today?
Is that?
Melba's at 9:30 for her normal night,
Right.
and then she's sticking around for license law.
Oh, okay, that's what I
Okay,
You
I'll be
have
better
something
at
else today.
looking at all the, I'm not
Yeah,
used to
you
all these other
posted-
people
you
wanting the
posted it on
reasons.
Facebook the other day.
like
Yeah, yeah.
ramp
In the
up.
meantime, let's go in the big conference room then. Okay. Yes,
Cause we're not done with Ignite until 12:30, so it's okay if we're like 30 minutes late.
yeah, what time did I say the event was?
You have 11 to 12 basic skills
Yeah.
camp, and then 12 to 1 ramp up preview.
Yeah, Yeah, that's where I'm coming to, is the ramp up,
Okay, so who's in Ignite?
Well, I'm doing
I
this.
am.
Natasha, you are too?
I'm down with that.
Okay, so I had basic skills from, what, 11 to 12?
11
Yeah.
to 12,
Okay, and then ramp up review from 12 to 1?
yeah,
And you guys are probably gonna be busy till around 1?
To 12:30.
12:30.
Okay, give me a minute to think on that. We'll figure it out. If worst case scenario is I'll record it, you can give me a couple things you wanna learn about, and I'll talk about it on the video. Yeah. I've got a few other things today that I might be able to rearrange.
If you're gonna change the ramp up one, post that on WhatsApp group, so I can kinda keep an eye on it, cause I was gonna be here at noon.
So everything is gonna be recorded,
Uh-huh.
and within probably 15 minutes of the class being over, it'll be uploaded to YouTube.
Okay, so we're keeping the times the same.
I don't know yet.
Okay.
Okay, I wanna spend just a minute going through this idea. There's this idea that we're being taught as leaders about what's called a tech audit. Has anyone heard that phrase? Tech audit? So here's kind of the way I want you to think about business. We're gonna go from 30,000 feet to like 2 inches in about 5 minutes, okay? So, what is the deal with this pen? Do we have any other, here we go. Okay, I want you to think of the real estate transaction like this, okay? And when it's over, we get paid $10,000, okay? The statistics say that between the time, there's a time period about right here that when a seller or a buyer gets, quote, serious about transacting the business, okay? And this is generally around 7 to 10 weeks. Prior to closing is when they're serious, okay? Then there's a line that we'll draw here. So I want you to think about your business in 3 segments. The first is everything over here, we'll call that lead generation. This space is called follow-up, and this space, what we're gonna call transaction management. Okay, now, if you, the goal of Command is to automate and systematize as much of your real estate business as you possibly can, okay? So what we're doing in interviews is basically taking, let's say Marie, and then I say, Marie, I want you to tell me every piece of software or every third-party application that you use to run your business, right? And she says, okay, we got a CRM over here, and we got BombBomb here, and we got Excel here, and we got Gmail here, and we have pay-per-click through Google up here, and then we have, what else? Throw something else at me. TikTok, right? All these kind of things, right? These are all the third-party providers that she uses to run her business. The goal is to figure out which of these items relates to lead generation, which of these items relates to follow-up, and which of these items relates to transaction management, and then find these systems within Command so that they no longer have to pay for this. Right? And once we can do that, then it creates a more profitable business for you, and it creates more of a relationship and connection to Keller Williams and our ecosystem. Does that make sense? So, what I want to make sure you understand is that if I were to say, Marie, tell me, this is what they recommended, and I know it's not so applicable for a lot of you, but write down every transaction that you had in the last 12 months, okay? And then what I want you to do is I want you to go back and find the source of all of those pieces of business, right? So these 3 came from open houses, this came from Zillow, this came from referral, this came from referral, this came from door knocking, whatever it is. Find out what your top 3 options are. For you guys, it just might be the ones you want to focus on at this moment, right? Let's just take open houses, for example. Let's say open houses is number 1. What we want to do is we wanna get down to the really nitty gritty about Natasha does open houses. How does that work exactly? Right? Everything from how do you select the open house, to what do you do prior to the open house, how do you prepare, what type of follow-up do you have, what's your system during that morning in terms of, you know, do you bring, is there anything to drink at the open house, is there anything to eat at the open house, are you speaking to the neighbors, when are you doing it, how are you doing it, etc. Right? And so you've got all these details about how Natasha pulls off an open house, right? The prep, right, the actual, and basically all the follow-up for it. And then what we're trying to do is create checklists and create systems to make sure that every person that you encounter at an open house gets the same experience, okay? Now, in order to pull off all this stuff, the people are gonna go through one of three processes, okay? The first is model and system. And we're gonna spend a little bit more time on this, but model and system, tech, and people. Now what I mean by that is we say, what is the model and system to organize and to track and to model how Natasha does an open house? Then we look to tech. How can tech create more profit, more efficiency, or eliminate some of the steps that we're doing based on automation, right? And then who's executing on all those tasks? Is it me? Or have I brought on somebody else in some capacity to do this, right? Does that make sense? Okay. The same thing happens with follow-up. So they draw a little map that, or a little picture that looks like this, okay? Let's say you have a closing, day of closing is right here. Somebody just bought a house, okay? So we know, and all these are times where they're gonna buy a house. In America, that is somewhere in the neighborhood of around 3 to 7 years, okay? Between the time they buy and sell a house. The second they buy a house, they go back down to right here. Because more often than not, they're not buying a house the day after they just bought a house, right? And so this lead becomes what I would consider pretty cold, right? You just spent 7 to 10 weeks with them intensely, and now the next day, they're not planning on transacting business for at least 3 to 7 years, right? But in order to get them back up here at some point, there's gonna have to be a bunch of contact points. So the question is what is this, right? What is your follow-up system? What is your 36 touch? What is your communication system? When do you call? When do you email? When do you text? When do you send them the app? Do you call them on their home anniversary, right? Do you wish them happy birthday? How do you do it? Do you sing happy birthday? Do you text them happy birthday? Do you do it on that day? Do you do it 3 days before? Do you post on Facebook? You know what I'm saying? So there's a bunch of stuff, a bunch of opportunities here to add value to that relationship so that you have emotional proximity to them when it comes time for them to want to start this process. Does that make sense? The vast majority of this can be automated through command. Now, as of now, you can't call them through command and, you know, have an automated call. That's not really what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is have some other.
It's texted them.
You could text them.
It's texted them in command.
But what you could do is say, hey, a week after closing, I want to send them a video text, right? And then I want to have a delay of 4 days, and then I want to send them a request for a, what do you call it, a review, something of that nature. And you can set up a system that is basically marking off all of these. These are the smart plans. So if you're not familiar with smart plans in command, I want you to spend today, 10 minutes today, experimenting with smart plans. Just watch some videos on it so you can see and maybe.
Where are the videos?
There's videos all over Connect. And there's also two, what are those groups called? I think one is called KW Command on Facebook. And there's one called Command Your
66 days,
Conversion, is
something?
that?
I don't know.
There's another
Oh,
one
they're
that's
by video.
66-day challenge on command. I think they're on the third version of that. And then there's another one, what's Nick Baldwin's again? Command Your Conversion, I think is what it's called. These are all Facebook command-based groups with thousands and thousands of Keller Williams agents telling you what they're trying and what's working and what's not working, and you can watch videos on how all that stuff is done. What we're trying to do here is if you don't have this systematized and automatized, number one, it's unlikely to happen, and number two, it's unlikely to happen with any regularity. And therefore, people are gonna slip through the cracks, and they may go end up working with a different agent, or they may have a need that doesn't get answered by you, or something of that nature, right? And then transaction management, I'm giving you a super fast version of this, but transaction management, that's where opportunities comes in. Right, so if you haven't explored opportunities in Command, you need to do that, because they have phases, they have checklists, they have all these things that are gonna help you make sure nothing slips through the cracks. For example, you meet a new buyer. Well, what happens then? Right? When do you input their information into Command? Do you set them up on a nurture? Do you invite them in for a buyer consultation? When do you set them up with a lender? Right? You're creating a checklist so that nothing slips through the cracks. Because remember, our average commission check is $10,000. They say there's probably about roughly 200 steps from the time you meet them to the time you get paid. And any of those steps could result in you losing that deal, right? And therefore, you want to make sure that as many of these as possible are on a checklist that you're referencing all the time, or somebody on your team is, or is automated. Make sense? Because every one of these steps is is costly, right? There is without a doubt somebody in my database that I made a promise to years ago that because I didn't look on the sheet on the right day or every day, I didn't execute on the promise, and therefore they worked with a different real estate agent. And that's painful, guys.
Isn't that that's a similar chart to, looks like a roller coaster, that Andy drew when he was here
That's right.
10 days ago, and how that most real estate agents are only focused on the tops.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
So,
and who knows, like, when they're one step below the absolute bottom, and the next bubble up.
I'm glad you brought that up. We'll spend a minute on that. So the idea here is all of these, if I were to give you a lead right here, and I said, hey, this person, they had a crappy experience with their last agent, they just bought a home last month, what would you say? You'd say, they're not gonna transact business for 3 to 7 years. I'm not gonna invest a whole lot of time in that. Well, you're a fool. You need to get into emotional relationship with them
Right.
and give them everything they need until they are ready, right? And oftentimes we value, you would be willing to pay for a lead, you would be willing to pay, let's say, $500 for a lead in that space in their life cycle, but you might only be willing to pay $100 for a lead down there. And that's the trap we all get caught in, is we end up chasing the people that are right there ready, and that is exhausting and expensive.
Yeah, but like Natasha's little $3 leads are headed up that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, roller
Now,
coaster,
just a
right?
quick note on your, and I'm not trying to tell you this was a bad strategy, and I'm sure it will work if you do it enough. One of the possible issues with that first ad that you talked about is that you probably got people that just wanted to see what a $1.2 million house looked like.
But I never put the price on it.
Was it obviously a really luxurious house?
Not really.
Okay,
No.
forget what I was saying
Yeah.
then.
That's what I was thinking.
But the
Yeah.
point Andy was making was that when they're at the bottom, the next spot, when they go from the absolute bottom of that roller coaster to the next rung up, guess who knows about it first?
You do if you're in a
Zillow,
relation.
right now.
Oh, right.
Then that's what Command is gonna teach us. That's what part of what
Right.
is so cool about Command.
And by the way, if somebody let's say somebody, there's an agent at ABC Realty that helps a buyer buy a home, and that happens here, and then the next day they're here, If they don't have the technology that we have access to, then they are essentially going to Zillow for that information, and then they get caught in that web, right? What you could do to avoid that is, who's ever bought a home and then even though they bought a home, they're still looking at homes for the next couple months to quote, make sure they got a good deal?
A lot
Makes
of people
sense.
do.
So what if that's where these people could use your app as well, right? And we have all this technology and all these tools and all these systems where any stage of a lead, whether they're ice cold or burning hot, there's some type of value you can provide them that will increase the likelihood that at this point, they'll transact business with you. Does that make sense? So what every issue that you have in your business right now, or everything that you're doing well in your business right now, is gonna fall into one of these three categories, or it's not really one or the other. It's, you have an issue, and the first thing you should say is, what's the model or system, right? How can technology make this easier? And is this something I should be doing, or should somebody else be doing this? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. What questions do we have?
I have a question. When we're talking about the Facebook ads, and Natasha mentioned she called the other realtor to ask her about the pictures, is that in relation to what Melba sent out last week about, agents calling in about us using their photos?
No.
Is that
It's-
What did Melba say?
There was a minute with Melba when she said, she made an announcement that we cannot use without the permission, any images that you find on Google. Let's say there was like a
Oh,
pretty
yeah,
image
yeah.
of like, some park in the community that some photographer posted on there because they took professional pictures of it. You can't use it unless you have the permission of that photographer.
That dude isn't given permission because he loves suing agents. I've dealt with 2 or 3 of those already.
Is that the same thing for agents though? Do you have to
No, I
call?
think with agents, because you're in reality, you're doing free advertising.
Yeah, you
for
need
their
to get
property.
permission now. Get permission.
But I think it's just a courtesy, like I think it's just nice to tell them that you're
I
using
mean,
their
there's
pictures.
there's a lot of, what if the seller has an issue with it, right? So the good rule of thumb is if you're gonna use somebody else's work product, you need to ask permission. And our listings and our photography of our listings is in fact our work product, right? And when that's really all we have is work products, by the way, right? We don't even own it. They own it, right? We're just making it pretty. But you gotta be very, very careful with pictures. You gotta be very, very careful with pictures. Like, let's say you wanna use a picture of Wills Park or the Beltline or something like that. If somebody else has taken the photo, you need to get permission from them.
Yeah.
And more often than not, they're not gonna give it to you, right? Cause they're professional, they're paid for that purpose, okay? All right, really, really quickly, everyone on Facebook in the PC group? Kim, I'll send you the invite later. Okay, everything is active, the Google Drive, Ramp Up, WhatsApp, Facebook. So if you're not in any of that stuff, let me know. Today I'll send you a link here shortly, okay?
So you're gonna actually do those meetings today in the other conference room, or are you gonna postpone that?
I'm gonna do,
I just need to see.
why don't we do this? I'll hold them just because I've already put it on the calendar and I'm not sure who's coming. And then I will record everything. And so there'll be some content that I'm sure you can learn from. And I will be a little bit more careful, a lot more careful next time about overlapping. Fair?
So
We
what's the
don't
name of
have
the
one
group?
of
Is it PC group? I'm sorry.
It's called Roswell PC. I think I sent you an invite for
I
it.
thought I